What would you do if you became God for a day? Probably a lot of clapping. Once upon a time in Buffalo, New York, there was a dude named Bruce Nolan. Now, Bruce was one unlucky guy. If he were to find a needle in a haystack, it would probably poke him in the eye. His job? A news reporter. Not the kind that gets to cover high-octane stories like alien invasions, or yet another celebrity catfight though. Nope. Bruce found himself rocking a hairnet, deep in the trenches of a bakery, tasked with a hard-hitting expose on what's believed to be Buffalo's largest cookie. It was so big, even Cookie Monster would be on a sugar coma. While these interviews should have been the cherry on top of his laughable career, Bruce didn't see the funny side of it. He dreamed of being the next Ron Burgundy, minus the jazz flute and milk obsession, of course. In his off hours, he lived with his ever-patient girlfriend Grace and their pup Sam, who had a pesky peeing problem, making indoor houseplants a definite no-go. Starting his day on the wrong foot was Bruce's favorite hobby. He was better at it than some people are at brewing their morning coffee. Every time he opened his eyes, you could almost hear the orchestra tuning up for another symphony of complaints. Despite all this, Grace loved him to bits, probably due to a severe case of Stockholm Syndrome. On a rare day off, Bruce joined Grace to donate blood to the Red Cross. Still sulking, she gave him her prayer beads, saying he needed all the divine intervention he could get. Sounds about right. Things got even hairier when Bruce arrived at work late, due to the Buffalo version of LA traffic. He was the butt of all jokes, especially the ones coming from his workplace nemesis, Evan Baxter. Picture this. Evan's the office golden boy, the guy who could sell ice to an Eskimo, while Bruce is, well, Bruce. After begging his boss Jack Baylor for a shot at the big leagues, Bruce finally got his chance. He was dispatched to Niagara Falls for a pivotal assignment. Bruce was thrilled. Imagine, no more giant cookies. It was his shot at the big leagues. He was even willing to wear a funny umbrella hat for the interview, channeling his inner Rihanna. But it all came crashing down when the office darling Evan was announced as the news broadcaster. That's right, Evan Perfect Hair Baxter. Bruce was so shocked he let loose a barrage of insults at Evan and an old lady who was part of the interview. It's safe to say he made quite the splash, just not the one he was hoping for at Niagara Falls. The network showed him the door faster than a vegan at a barbecue, leaving him out on the street with his belongings. Later, a group of thugs tried to mess with the homeless guy, but when they saw Bruce, they decided he looked like a more entertaining punching bag. Bruce tried to channel his inner Chuck Norris, but sadly that didn't work. Bruised and battered, Bruce returned home and had a one-man pity party, blaming God for everything going wrong in his life. Grace took this personally, realizing she ranked lower than a potted plant in Bruce's life. In a fit of rage, Bruce decided to go for a drive, praying and cursing at the same time. He was like a human version of Schrodinger's cat. So there's Bruce, outside his car ranting at God like a toddler, who dropped his ice cream cone, then yeets his prayer beads into the lake. Suddenly his beeper starts going off. Unknown number. Sounds fishy, so he doesn't answer it. The next day, same drill. The beeper chirps again. Same mysterious number. In a fit of techno rage, Bruce throws it into the street and it gets smashed by a car. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. His dog, Sam, must have felt inspired because he decided to let loose in the house. While taking Sam outside, Bruce hears the pager beeping again. Confusing? Sure. But Bruce decides to roll with it. He calls the number and hears an audio recording tailored just for him. Not creepy at all, right? Feeling a mix of curiosity and horror, he drives to the address given in the message, ending up in Buffalo's warehouse district. Getting out of the car, he steps into a massive muddy puddle. His shoes 1, Bruce 0. Muttering a sarcastic thank you to God, he heads into the warehouse. Inside, there's nothing but a janitor mopping the floor. The guy directs him to the 7th floor, room 7, a white room with nothing but air and opportunity. And guess what? Mr. Janitor's now in a snazzy white suit. And oh yeah, he's also God. Plot twist. God apparently has Bruce's life documented better than a reality TV show. Every detail neatly filed away. In an effort to convince Bruce he's legit, God plays a guessing game, accurately predicting the number of fingers Bruce is hiding behind his back. Now that's a party trick. And here's the kicker. God decides to give Bruce a power upgrade. He figures since Bruce seems to think he's got a better handle on things, why not let him take the reins? Unsurprisingly, Bruce bolts. Back at his car, he steps into the same puddle but doesn't soak his foot this time. Progress. Then his car refuses to start until he yells at it. He takes his newfound yelling at things skill on a test drive and starts bringing his fantasies to life. Like being Clint Eastwood. Minus the cowboy hat and horse, of course. Hungry from all the power tripping, Bruce stops at a diner for coffee. The waitress tries to upsell him some tomato soup. Bruce entertains himself with some magic tricks while waiting, like pulling a spoon out of his mouth. Take that, David Blaine. When the soup finally arrives, he parts it like Moses. Because why not? It's just another average day in the life of almighty Bruce. So God shows up out of the blue, offering Bruce a cosmic tutorial in his newfound abilities. 2 critical rules. Rule 1, don't tell anyone you're God. Wouldn't want to have a God complex now, would we? Rule 2, can't mess with free will, meaning no love potions or creepy mind control. They take this conversation to the next level, literally, by casually strolling on a lake in Buffalo. God's about to take a divine vacation and hands over the reins to Bruce. Our man Bruce in downtown Buffalo goes full sandbox mode, testing out his godly superpowers like a kid in a candy store. He makes a fire hydrant explode, just cuz. He then spots an attractive girl walking by and in a display of mild perviness, winds up her skirt. His godly fashion sense kicks in when he sees a fly outfit in his shop window and swaps her clothes for his. Seeing the gang that beat him earlier, Bruce decides it's payback time. They refuse to apologize, saying they'd only do so when a monkey pops out of their leader's rear end. Now here's where things go full bananas, quite literally. A monkey shoots out of the dude's butt. Yeah, you heard that right. Bruce then goes all bizarre, spitting out a swarm of bees, sending the thugs into full retreat. Afterward, Bruce climbs a skyscraper, creates a lightning storm, and in a not-so-humble brag, declares himself Bruce Almighty. He heads home to find Grace chilling on the couch with some wine. He sweeps her off her feet with flowers and kisses, confusing her with his sudden joyful demeanor. While she's away fetching a vase, Bruce gets to work on setting the mood. He clears the clouds, pulls the moon closer, talk about overkill, and creates a romantic night sky. He then channels his inner hairdresser, running his hands through Grace's hair, and sparks fly. Things heat up and Grace dashes off to prepare for what promises to be an unforgettable night. In the bedroom, Bruce does a quick lights off, candles on switcheroo with his divine powers and gets ready. He then explores the PG-13 side of his powers, leaving Grace quivering. She returns, ready for action, and Bruce is promptly tackled. The next morning, Bruce wakes up to some strange voices in his head. But hey, after a night like that, who wouldn't? So we catch up with Bruce in the kitchen, landing a surprise smooch on Grace. After breakfast, he heads out intent on reclaiming his old job. His beat-up car gets a divine upgrade to a snazzy sports car, because hey, style matters. He crashes a crime scene where his rivals are busy taunting him. No biggie for Bruce, who decides to find the long-lost body of Jimmy Hoffa, like he's playing a divine game of hide-and-seek. Lo and behold, there's Jimmy. He conducts an impromptu news interview and for a cherry on top, conjures up a suspicious amount of oregano in his competitor's van. Cue the handcuffs and the shocked faces. Bruce 1, rival 0. Back at the station, Bruce is greeted like a returning hero. He's back on the job, turning fluff pieces into divine scoops. His biggest showstopper? Dropping a meteorite in the middle of an interview. Casual, right? And as for Evan, let's just say Bruce lends him a helping hand on his transmitter debut, gifting him with a tongue-twisting stutter. Karma's divine, isn't it, Evan? Life is a divine dream for Bruce. One night he takes Grace to a fancy restaurant. He starts getting all excited, drops to one knee, and Grace thinks it's proposal time. But psych, Bruce just got the broadcasting gig. Grace, expecting a ring, is left understandably disappointed. But Bruce starts hearing voices, and not the ghostly kind. God whisks him off to Mount Everest. Because who needs conference rooms, right? God points out that Bruce has been acting less like a deity and more like a selfish buffoon. He's been hearing prayers, not just random chatter, and it's his job to answer them. So Bruce does what any tech-savvy deity would do. He downloads all the prayers like emails. But whoa, this inbox is insane. He tries to answer them individually, but the prayers just keep coming. So he does what we all wish we could do with our inboxes. He hits yes to all. Let's see how that works out for the good folks of Buffalo. During a party to celebrate Bruce's promotion, Grace is MIA. Bruce tries to coax her into coming by magicking a rom-com onto her TV, but when she shows up, she finds Bruce is in a compromising position with a colleague. Ouch, heartbroken. Grace calls it quits. Bruce, realizing his mistake, kicks everyone out by triggering the fire alarms. He pleads with God for advice on how to win Grace back. He tries every romantic cliché in the book, serenading her on the radio, skywriting love notes, but nothing works. In a desperate move, Bruce visits Grace himself. He confesses that he misses her, but it's one of those painfully awkward moments. Bruce tries to break rule number 2 and make Grace love him, but alas, divine powers have their limits. Who knew being God could be this complicated? Bruce's debut as the big shot TV transmitter is more off than on, literally, thanks to an out-of-whack electricity supply. Turns out granting everyone's wishes led to a few too many lottery winners, so each winner wound up with a whole $17. And here we were thinking miracles didn't come cheap. In the face of this self-created disaster, Bruce has a divine epiphany. His stint as God has been less saintly savior and more chaotic catastrophe, so he decides it's high time to quit his job and start mopping up his mess. He hustles back to the warehouse where he first met God, and what do you know? God's there, cleaning the floor, probably getting ready for his next unsuspecting applicant. Coincidentally, or not, it's the 7th day at 7 o'clock since their first meeting. Do you think God has a thing for sevens? God hands Bruce a mop and they start a holy cleanup session. As he scrubs, Bruce has a revelation. He needs to start using his powers to actually help people. Revolutionary, right? First on the agenda, teaching his dog to pee outside, which, let's face it, feels like a bigger miracle than finding Jimmy Hoffa. Then in a show of divine humility, Bruce gives his coveted TV job back to Evan, agrees to return to his old interviewing gig, and even finishes Grace's photo album. Talk about a divine turnaround. When Grace's sister comes to pick up her things, she initially gives Bruce the evil eye, but softens when she sees the finished album. She lets slip that Grace prays for him. Intrigued, Bruce checks out Grace's prayers, which, spoiler alert, are all about him. But the latest one is a tearjerker. Grace is praying to forget Bruce, because she still loves him. Witnessing Grace's heartbreak through her window, guilt washes over Bruce like a divine tidal wave. In emotional turmoil, he drops to his knees in the middle of the street to pray. Then he gets blasted by a truck, because apparently, divine intervention doesn't cover traffic awareness. Next thing Bruce knows, he's in the cloud with God. God tells him he's got the power to bring smiles to people's faces and teaches him how to pray properly. Then he presses his fingers on Bruce's chest and bam! Bruce wakes up in a blaze of lights with a paramedic trying to zap him back to life. Next day, Bruce is in a hospital bed, noticing he's receiving AB positive blood. Grace's blood type. And as if on cue, Grace walks in and gives him a heartwarming hug. In the end, Bruce is back at the bakery from the beginning of our tale, wrapping up a Red Cross blood drive report with a giant syringe-shaped cookie. Talk about a sweet way to donate. Then live on TV, he drops the big news. He's going to marry Grace. And off they walk, leaving us with a sugary end to this divine comedy. Moral of the story? He got that God in him.